People have been asking the question of whether resurrection after death is possible for a very long time. And there is hardly a religion that does not have its own answer. The living dead have a strong place in culture, from ancient myths to blockbusters. But is resurrection really possible? To understand what death is, you need to understand what life is and how a living being differs from a dead one. According to one ancient theory called vitalism, all living things acquire their properties as a result of the presence in it of vital force, a special essence without which no life is possible. It was called by different names, but at one time there was no doubt about it. Echoes have survived to this day in the form of stories about those who can take life forces from others or draw them from magical sources. In the West, the position of this theory was first shaken in the 17th century, which was marked by the development of science. An attempt to save the theory was made by Descartes, according to whose hypothesis the soul was placed by the creative pineal gland of the brain. But otherwise there is no difference between the human body and the mechanism. Dr. McDougall went even further, who in 1907 declared that he was able to weigh the soul by comparing the weight of people immediately before and after death. Although these statements were later refuted, vitalism, having left the scientific scene, became firmly entrenched in culture. Currently, vitalism has been replaced by the understanding that behind life there are not mythical vital forces, but not a ceased biological process in the body. To imagine how these processes work, you need to look inside the cells, where hundreds of chemical reactions do not stop for a second, during which the energy currency of the cell, ATP, is synthesized from glucose molecules with the participation of oxygen, which is further spent on all processes from wound healing to reproduction, with all the energy required to synthesize the necessary molecules. Transportation is an even more energy-intensive process. Molecules, in full accordance with the law of increasing entropy, move from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration until equilibrium is reached, and also disintegrate into smaller molecules or simply into atoms. Counteraction to entropy at the cellular level is carried out due to the constant expenditure of energy, which is used to maintain the shape of the most complex molecular structures responsible for the functioning of the cell. In the absence of recharge, entropy takes over, and the avalanche-like destruction of these structures leads to death. Therefore, there is no magic remedy that would bring someone who has just died back to life. No amount of artificial respiration will help. In conditions where the oxygen processing mechanisms have stopped working as a result of the death of the corresponding cells. In the same way, a discharge from a defibrillator passed through the heart will not help, the only task of which is to restore the heart rate of the heart of a still living person in order to save him from death. This device cannot resurrect a corpse, and reviving Frankenstein is out of the question. Whatever one may say, it turns out that the achievement of modern medicine can only be delayed by death. While resurrection is pure fantasy, however, one should not rush to conclusions. Let's take, say, a diagnosis such as coma, which, thanks to continuous progress in the field of medicine, has ceased to be synonymous with death and has turned into a condition from which it can be deduced. It is possible that in the future the kingdom of death will be able to conquer new territories. Scientists know animals that survive in exceptional conditions by slowing down biological processes, almost to the point of their complete cessation. According to experts in the field of cryonics, it will be possible to carry out the same operations on dying people, freezing them and resurrecting them, if treatment methods become available. The fact is that in frozen cells the molecules move slowly and there is practically no diffusion. And even if all cellular mechanisms inside have ceased to function, theoretically this condition is reversible. Imagine an army of nanobots that move molecules to their original positions, while pumping energy into cells in the form of ATP, in other words, returning the body to the state before death. In general, if we consider life not as a supernatural entity, but as a process that organizes itself, then death is nothing more than a jump in entropy that destroys a fragile balance. And therefore the criteria for biological death are not at all something immutable, but are determined by the extent to which scientists have learned to reverse entropy.